We have the voice of the Minnesota Timberwolves, the man, the myth, the legend, Dave Benz. What's going on, Dave?
That's a big intro. I don't know about the legend, but the myth is the legend, or the legend is the myth.
Well,
How you guys are on the East Coast, right? How you guys holding up out there?
we are good, my friend. How about you and your family?
Everything's okay. Everything's okay. Just kind of, just like everybody else, taking one day at a time right now.
It's scary. It really is. It's really scary.
It sure is. It'd be nice to get back to life as we knew it, whenever that's going to happen.
Well, Dave, do you think there's going to be do you think there's going to be an NBA season, or do you think they're going to move off it to next year?
I mean, anybody's guess, right, is really valid right now. There's no way anybody can predict what's going to happen. I would like to think that there are too many reasons for there not to be NBA basketball coming back, and what version of that's going to be is also anybody's guess. Is there going to be all 30 teams coming back in some form, playing some kind of regular season games to at least get the teams that have qualified for the playoffs tuned up for the playoffs? Are they going to go right to the playoffs? Is there not going to be anything? I was watching the NBA on TNT, guys. They did a Zoom conference hit or whatever it was, and the Jet, Kenny Smith, said that he thinks they should do a single game elimination tournament. And I think all options are on the table at this point, and nobody really knows. Anybody that says anything otherwise, it's just pure guesswork. Adam Silver says they're not really even going to discuss it until May 1st. I do think that when games come back, whenever that is, it's going to be vastly different than the last time we saw games. I don't think we're going to be seeing games with fans in arenas anytime soon. And even if they do open up the arenas for fans, how many fans are going to, be anxious to go and be out in public and be at an arena and be at a game right away? So there's just a lot of questions that remain to be answered. But I know that the NBA ownership and the teams, they certainly would love to play games. The Players Association, they want to come back and they want to play games. So everybody wants to play. It's just a matter of, can they play and how's it going to happen? And right now, nobody has any clue.
One of the other question marks, Dave, is also the upcoming draft in June. Now, the NFL has done it where they're going to do all virtual with their draft next week. Do you think the NBA could do something similar? And if so, do you think it'll be a little more complicated with all the international prospects to be able to do everything like that too? And if so, do you think that'll force them to move that too?
Yeah, personally, and this is only my own opinion, I don't see the NBA draft happening in June when it usually happens. I would be very surprised if that happens, because how can you possibly draft a player that you haven't worked out, that you haven't had any, you could do interviews with them online, I suppose, but you haven't worked anybody out. You haven't seen, how they can, what their skill set is in terms of the system you're trying to put in. There are a lot of things that you determine by having players in for workouts. There's been no combine. I don't see why there would be any reason for there to be a rush to have a draft. I think that, I'd be shocked if there was a push from the teams to say, hey, we have to get this draft done right away. I would be very surprised. Again, it's my own personal opinion, but I'd be very surprised if the NBA draft happens in June when it normally happens.
We are talking to the voice of the Timberwolves, Dave Benz. Dave, let me ask you a question. You look at the Timberwolves right now as a team, a growing team with Karl-Anthony Towns, the piece that they need to build their team around. Where do you see this team going? They decided to trade Andrew Wiggins away. They move away from Tom Thibodeau. Where do you see this team moving forward with Ryan Saunders? Is he the coach, or are they going to be looking for a new coach at the end of the season?
Well, I believe Ryan is the coach for the foreseeable future. He's got one more year left on the contract. And this season, sure, the one-loss total is not what anybody would like it to be, but I don't think there were unrealistic expectations that this was going to be a year that this team was going to get back into the playoff mix. Gerson Rosas, who came on as the president of basketball ops and hired Ryan Saunders full-time to be the head coach and had the option to hire anybody he wanted to, he's had a lot of patience, and he's said multiple times that This is about the long term. This is about putting this team on a path where they can win consistently and not just be a team that, okay, we're going to bring in a couple of veteran players to win us a couple of more games this year, because that doesn't do any good for the long-term product. And so everybody's been on the same page in that regard. I believe full-heartedly Ryan Saunders will be the head coach to finish out whatever's left of this season. If there is any finish, he'll be the head coach, going into whatever and whenever training camp happens, and he'll be the head coach to start next year. Will the expectations be different next year if this team struggles out of the gates coming into, the start of next season? There may be a little bit of a different criteria, because now the team feels like they do have more of the players in place that they really want to have. They like the fact that they've got DeAngelo Russell now paired up with Karl-Anthony Towns, and they really like Malik Beasley, who they were able to bring in from Denver, and they're going to control him as a restricted free agent whenever the offseason happens. So there's a lot to like about the pieces this team has in place, and that's one of the things I think that was frustrating about the way the season ended, is you were starting to see what Malik Beasley could do and what DeAngelo Russell could do in a Timberwolves uniform. Of course, Karl-Anthony Towns has been out for a long time with a wrist injury, so you didn't really get to see all the pieces put together. But there is a lot of enthusiasm that the Timberwolves now, they do have a nice core to build around of guys that they really feel fit their system. And, Andrew Wiggins was a, fantastic athletic talent. And I believe Andrew's probably going to have a nice career at Golden State. I don't think for whatever reason it was clicking in Minnesota the way anybody wanted it to. And I certainly hope Andrew does find success with the Warriors. But the Timberwolves are really happy with what they got at the trade deadline and feel good about, the nucleus going forward.
Dave, you actually just really foreshadowed into my next question, because before you worked with the Timberwolves as a play-by-play guy, you also did some work with the Golden State Warriors. So knowing both of those teams really well, the Timberwolves and the Warriors, who do you think actually got the better end of that Wiggins-Russell trade? Do you think it was a win-win for both teams? Do you think those pieces are there to stay? Do you think they could be focal points and maybe rise into what they were supposed to be as prospects? Who do you think got the better of that deal in your opinion?
I mean, I know this isn't a great answer, but I think that, we don't really have enough to go on that yet. I like to think the Timberwolves got the better end of the deal, because the bottom line is the Timberwolves have needed a ball-dominant point guard who can get their own shot, who can set teammates up, who can hit clutch shots when the game is on the line. That has been a position of need for them for, the last 15 years, really, since 2004, when they had Sam Cassell running the point and Steph Marbury before that. But since that time, and, no slight against the people who played that position, Jeff Teague was an all-star at one point in his career. Ricky Rubio, fantastic human being, loved covering Ricky, loved his enthusiasm, a better than average defender. I don't think he gets enough respect for his defense. And clearly his passing was amazing, but he's not a guy who you can rely on to hit a shot for you with the game on the line. So for the Timberwolves to finally fill that need that they've had for well over a decade, that's huge for them. For the Warriors, they get a guy who was the number one overall draft pick. And, you put him in a situation where he's with Draymond Green and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Steve Kerr leading the way, and they know what it takes to be able to win a championship. I got to believe that that's going to rub off on Andrew and bring out the best in him. So this could be one of those trades that goes down as a win-win. And, for now, I would say that the edge is on the Timberwolves side, because they filled more of a gaping need. But I think the Warriors will ultimately be very happy with what they got out of Andrew Wiggins as well.
Dave, what is going on with Kevin Garnett and the Timberwolves organization? A lot of people have been talking about him, his jersey being hung at the rafters of the Boston the Boston Arena?
Garden.
Boston
TD
Garden.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, TD Garden.
Yeah.
And now there are stories coming out in Minnesota. He doesn't want his jersey raised up to the rafters. What are your thoughts with this?
No, first of all, I haven't talked to KG about it. But the people who have talked to him, everything I've read, everything I've seen, Kevin Garnett feels like he was slighted by Glenn Taylor, the Timberwolves owner. He thinks that, he was on track, or he thought when he came back to Minnesota the second time, he was going to be on track to maybe be able to get into the ownership group of the team. And he wanted to be able to, he aspired to be able to do that. And if you read everything he says, he feels like he was slighted in that process. And a lot of it, unfortunately, had to do with the passing of Flip Saunders, who was the one who orchestrated bringing KG back to Minnesota the second time. So in KG's mind, he feels like he was slighted, and he has stated very publicly that he doesn't want any association with Glenn Taylor. And that is really unfortunate, because the people who are the collateral damage and all that are the diehard Timberwolves fans. And if you ask most Timberwolves fans why they're a Timberwolves fan, anybody that's, that's 30 years old or older, they're going to tell you they're a Timberwolves fan because of Kevin Garnett. There's no question. Even maybe a 25-year-old might remember KG from when they were really young. But I mean, the bottom line is he was the guy who was the face of that franchise. He was the guy who put the franchise on the map, and the fans there still adore him. And I really believe that Kevin Garnett still has a great affinity for the fans. He still owns a place in Minneapolis and still will come into town on occasion. But because he feels like he was slighted by ownership, he's not interested in having anything to do with having his number put up in the rafters because of that rift. And it's really, really unfortunate. And the fans are suffering as a result. But, ultimately that's between Kevin Garnett and Glenn Taylor to sort out. And you just hope they do find a way to find common ground on that.
Dave, we were talking about this last week with this whole Garnett saga, and I brought up the fact that because the Timberwolves are still kind of a younger team, and they were an expansion team back in the 90s, and again, outside of, again, some short stretches like you were mentioning from Cassell and Marbury and guys like that, really Garnett's been the best player by far in that history, and like you said, the fans will still remember it. So do you think they would still actually have the retirement ceremony even if Garnett doesn't show up, just for the fans and for that, even if, again, he's still in protest?
I'd be really surprised if that were to happen. I mean, ultimately, I suppose it could, but I don't see what the point is in retiring somebody's number and putting it up in the rafters if the person that you're honoring isn't willing to be a part of it to come there. So that's why, ultimately this thing needs to get settled in whatever way it's going to get settled. And maybe it's going to be while Glenn Taylor still owns the team and he and KG find a way to work it out. And maybe it's going to be at some point in the future. I mean, Glenn Taylor won't own the Timberwolves forever. I really love Mr. Taylor. It's been fantastic to me. I think he gets a bad rap from a lot of people because of the fact that the Timberwolves have not had a lot of success and historically have struggled, and there have been certainly questionable decisions that have been made. But it hasn't been made because he hasn't been willing to open his wallet, and it hasn't been made because he doesn't want that team to win. He's at every game. He's checking every box score. He's passionate about the team. He wants them to win. So, you just hope that somehow, some way they can find a way to figure that out.
Dave, thank you for joining us. Could you give the fans how they could find you on Instagram, on Twitter?
So I'm at Tweet Dave Benz on Twitter. And if you guys give me 1 second, I want to actually plug something real quick that I've been working on.
Absolutely.
With this whole coronavirus thing. So since we stopped playing games, I kind of took on a passion project to give myself something to do. So rather than shelter in place, I came up with the idea to start a website called Selfie in Place. So it's just selfieinplace.com. And we're asking people to log on and create a profile and upload one picture per day. And you can only upload one picture per day. The site will limit you to just one picture per day because we don't want to be Instagram. We don't want to be Facebook. They're already obviously very good at what they do. We don't need to be that. But we want one picture per day. So then over the course of this crisis, people can go to people's profiles and kind of see through a single snapshot a day the evolution that everyone went through on their own little individual journeys on this. And I'm also pairing up with someone who started a fund for freelance sports media people who have lost their paychecks because of the coronavirus crisis. And so we're asking people if they like the site to donate, and all the information's there on the site. But I think, there's been a lot of talk about, hey, the arena workers and the ticket takers and all that have lost their jobs as a result of this. I don't think enough people know that the people who bring you the sports on television that you're now lacking, the producers, the directors, the camera people, even a majority of the on-air people, they're all freelance people. They're all independent contractors. And without the games, these people aren't getting checks. And a lot of them, unfortunately, because they're freelancers, are having a hard time getting unemployment as well. So this website, we're hoping we can help contribute to that fund to help those people out. Wells Open weekend, people can tell a story through a single picture a day. So selfieandplace.com. If people want to register, obviously it's free, and we certainly would welcome all comers to the site.